Well, they say that third time's a charm, but I'm afraid that charm is only surface level in this case. Syd of Valis, released in 1992 for Sega Genesis, aka Valis SD for Mega Drive, which is what we're actually playing via the Valis Collection Volume 2, is a strange little game that takes Valis 2 and reimagines it as a super deformed chibified format. This is a thing they often do in Japan, where they take something that's serious and mature, shrink it down to pint size, and treat it as not so serious and mature. See SD Gundam, for example. Or are we supposed to call it Syd of Gundam? Anyway, Syd of Valis, which denotes someone named Syd from Valis, which for those who don't know, is the name of a sword and not a place, but whatever. The title mistranslation or transliteration or whatever you want to call it is the least of this game's woes. So a quick rundown of gameplay, which is fairly similar to Valis 2, the main source of parity. You have a sword that shoots beams. You beat bosses to occasionally gain new sword beams and even pieces of armor that you can equip, but mostly this results in a full heal, which is also quite nice. Yuko, or Syd, or whoever, can shoot upwards and downwards, which is really useful at times, and can also use screen nuking bombs to get herself out of a pinch. The gameplay here is fairly simplistic. You gain weapons and armors that you could switch between on a whim, with the armor not only changing your on-screen appearance, but also offering differing stats. Some have better defense, some move faster, some hit harder, or some combination. What none of these armors grant the player, however, is better control. Syd of Valis features perhaps some of the most floatiest jumping physics I've ever come across in a vintage side-scroller. I mean, it's ridiculous, to the point where using the powered-up Valis form that is much faster becomes a hindrance in regards to basic platforming because of how floaty and how hard it is to control your jumping as a result due to the absurd added speed. And so I have to scale back to the default schoolgirl outfit to get some semblance of control over these atrociously floaty jumps, and even then it's a crapshoot, particularly with moving platforms. The game does give you a double jump ability, which kinda sorta helps in some cases, but in the case of Valis SD, a double jump seems less like a useful ability and more like a course correction in case you're about to fall into a pit or a bed of spikes or whatever else the case may be. And it's really too bad because the rest of the game does have some semblance of promise. I like the idea of swapping between weapons and armor to better suit the situation, which I think is something the computer versions dabbled with. It's a neat little idea. And being able to shoot upwards or downwards gives you some added flexibility in your attacks, which you can swap between different beams. And unlike in Valis 2, the levels are a little more involved and inspired. So you've got a game here that could have been a decent little action title, but again, it all boils down to floaty jumps and sloppy controls that just ruin the whole goddamn thing. Oh, and just to remind people, this came out in 1992, after Valis 4 on PC Engine. It's one of the last 3 Valis games that got released before the series went into hibernation. It's also the last Valis game to grace Mega Drive, and the decline from Valis 3 to this is pretty steep. And yeah, you can argue that at the very least this plays better than the original computer releases, and that's true, but that's not exactly a very high bar to clear, now is it? Right, so moving on to visuals, Syd of Valis naturally adopts a chibi style of visual presentation where all the human characters are super deformed chibi things, while all the monster characters are cutesy versions of their original incarnations. Obviously, this is supposed to be a goofier take on previously featured material, and look, I'll be honest, I got a kick out of the cute and cuddly chibi things. They look fine in this format. I like the reaction shots, the little idle animation, and the scenery isn't too bad. No issues with how this game looks. Also, unlike the other Mega Drive ports, Syd of Valis doesn't have the animated cutscenes, but rather pushes its storyline with in-game sprites and occasional talking heads, which is more than adequate. On the sound front, however, yeah, so there's a code that you can pull off on the title screen where if you hold B while pressing start, you'll kill the music. This makes the game infinitely more playable, as the music in this game could be best described as fucking awful. Look, there's a bunch of third-party Mega Drive games that have a bit of twang in their chiptunes, and that doesn't make them completely terrible, but even without the twang, the music in Syd of Valis is just bad. Ear-grating, unpleasant to listen to, largely repetitive rubbish that is unfathomably unbearable. Sound effects, on the other hand, are just there. Yippee, whatever. Next. So yeah, I'll be honest, Syd of Valis, SD Valis, Valis SD, STD Valis, whatever you want to call it, definitely on the lower end of quality in regards to all these Valis games. Nowhere near as bad as the original computer versions, but far below the quality of the PC Engine releases or even the other Mega Drive releases that came before this. Which confounds me to witness a line of titles on a console degrade further into both literal and figurative parody over time. As much as I hate to rag on a game with its cutesy visuals that at least give the game a bit of charm and whimsy, none of that means anything if the core elements of the package, the gameplay, controls, and specifically the jumping physics, aren't worth a damn. All in all, Syd of Valis on Mega Drive is a bit of a fumble. And the sad thing is, it's not even the worst thing we're playing this week.